gave her a public is here. They are waiting.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to today's City Planning Commission meeting. It is now 1:41, and we will call business to order, starting with a roll call. Commissioner. Oh, okay. Oh, there you go.
Oh.
Perfect. Commissioner Joshi Gupta. Commissioner Alexander.
Present.
Commissioner Witry. Commissioner Jordan, present. Commissioner Flick.
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Commissioner Stewart. Present. Next, I will read the formal public hearing. No. How do we have? We have approval minutes before reading here. Yeah, we have that out of order. Yeah. Okay. First, we'll start with the reading of the formal public hearing rules. The City Planning Commission has established certain rules governing the procedures to be followed at public hearings. Before speaking, each person shall give their name, address, and state whom he or she is representing. Proponents for the proposal will speak first for a period of 10 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents or other interested parties will speak second for a period of 15 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Proponents will be allowed a period of 6 minutes for rebuttal. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents will not be allowed to rebut. No material, written matter, photographs, or maps will be accepted by the commission or its staff at any time during this public hearing. This procedure shall be followed except at such a time when the presiding officer shall, with the approval of the commission members present, extend such time. And our first item is the adoption of the minutes of the September 12th, 2023 meeting.
Commissioner Flick will make a motion for approval of September 12th meeting minutes. Commissioner Alexander will second.
So, is there any further discussion? If not, we'll vote our machines. Minutes are approved. Next up is zoning docket item 06523.
Zoning docket 6523 is a request to amend Article 9 Historic Core Neighborhood Residential Districts of the CZO to create a new zoning classification, VCR3, and to make the associated zoning map changes to effectuate the new zoning district. The purpose of the VCR3 district is to allow a mix of primarily residential uses limited to singles and doubles, educational and cultural uses. When compared to the VCR1 district, VCR1 and VCR2 districts, VCR3 is intended to promote educational and cultural uses that are compatible with single and two-family residential uses. The proposed zoning district is aimed at steering potential future uses of the Homer Plessy School located at 721 St. Philip Street, which is currently zoned VCR1. If the new zoning district were to be approved, a subsequent zoning change would be required to effectuate the new zoning district for the intended site. While the impetus for this text amendment is the Homer Plessy School, if the amendment were approved, it could theoretically be applied across the French Quarter, not just to the subject site. When compared to the existing zoning and land use trends within the French Quarter, including its residential zoning districts, the proposed VCR3 district is very restrictive and is out of context with the current historic land use trends in the neighborhood, which has historically featured an array of housing types, including multifamily and neighborhood serving commercial uses, as noted in Figure 3 of the staff report. If approved, the new zoning district would conflict with the city's future land use map, which aims to promote a mix of uses across the French Quarter, and explicitly notes adaptive reuse projects, which would be precluded by the proposed VCR3 district. While staff is sympathetic to the preservation of institutional and educational uses, the proposed text amendment is not guaranteed to serve the applicant's end goal of preserving the Homer Plessy School. It could also have the unintended consequence of creating a zoning district that would serve as a tool for housing opponents and even potentially result in the future underutilization of this property or similar properties across the French Quarter, which could result in vacancy and blight. Even if the zoning district were adopted and applied to the site, there's still potential that the owner could vacate the site, leaving the building with a zoning that precludes virtually all compatible uses given its size and location. For the stated reasons, staff recommends denial of zoning docket 6523.
Thank you. We don't have any comment cards. Is there any further discussion from the commissioners, questions for staff? If not, I'll look for a motion.
Make a motion for the staff.
Uh-oh, mic is off.
I'll make a motion to move forward with staff recommendation as denial of zoning docket 065-23.
Commissioner Flickel, second.
No further discussion. Vote your machines. Okay. Thank you. The zoning docket is deferred.
No.
I'm sorry, motion passes. Okay. Next up is zoning docket item 07223.
Zoning docket 7223 is an amendment to Xavier University's institutional master plan that was approved under design review 09416 in accordance with Article 15, Section 15.5.f, changes to approved institutional master plans. The application is seeking a modification of the height requirement for a new dorm on the South Campus, which is considered through the conditional IMP process in accordance with Article 15, Section 15.5A.2, conditional development of the comprehensive zoning ordinance. The process requires review and recommendation by the City Planning Commission and final approval by the City Council. The staff recommends deferral of zoning docket 7223 to the October 24th, 2023 CPC regular meeting to allow the applicant more time to work with Xavier University's development team to adjust plans to better comply with the zoning regulations.
Acknowledge that Commissioner Flick has recused herself. We have one speaker card from Todd Gennaro.
Good afternoon, Todd Gennaro, 201 St. Charles Avenue, New Orleans, Louisiana, here on behalf of Xavier University, the applicant. We would just ask that you accept the recommendation of the staff for deferral to the October 24th meeting. We've been in discussions with staff for some time now, and we're very close to to being in a better position to move this forward, but another week or two would be helpful.
Thank you. With no more comment cards, is there any question for staff? If not, I'll look for a motion.
Commissioner Alexander, I will make the motion.
I can. Design Review 2623 considers an amendment to the development plans, which were approved in conjunction in an HUMU district. The current application seeks to amend the plans that were approved. The applicant is proposing to add a new freestanding canopy structure. The bar is on the ground floor of a mixed-use structure. The conditional use only applies to the 1,240 square foot bar and adjoining outdoor dining area, not the entire mixed-use structure. The canopy would cover the back two paved patios used for outdoor restaurant seating. Because the property is governed by of an additional permanent structure must be approved by the City Planning Commission pursuant to section 4.5.f.2. The outdoor seating area was already contemplated in the size of the bar, and the inclusion of a canopy structure above the seating area in no way intensifies the use of the bar. Any development related approval of design review
Cards, but is a applicant present? Okay, is there any questions for staff or the applicant? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
Commissioner Flick will make a motion for approval per staff report.
There's a second.
Second.
With no further discussion, we can cast our votes. Design review passes. Congratulations. 2-3.
street name change 0. Councilmember Jeruso on behalf of the New Orleans Firefighters Association. The proposal is to rename 11 blocks of Kenilworth Street on the south side of Interstate 610 between the unnamed alley located between Canal Boulevard and Vicksburg Street on the west side and Orleans Ave on the east side as Firefighter Way. The request for the street name changes to honor and commemorate the work of the New Orleans firefighters at the location of the new headquarters, located at what is currently the intersection of Orleans Ave and Kenilworth Street. Technically, the new headquarters are located on the 5700 block of General Haig Street, but that street is considered a paper street and not suitable for renaming. The name change would affect 2 lots of record and run approximately 0.4 miles in length. The city's designated steward of electronic geographic information has also requested the renaming of the stretch of Kenilworth Street to help avoid confusion as there is a separate Kenilworth Street on the other side of Interstate 610, and the proposed renaming of this portion of Kenilworth Street would reduce confusion for emergency responders and callers. The proposal will not create any non-continuous street segments. CPC staff recommends modifying the proposal to Firefighter Street instead of Firefighter Way. Generally, a street is considered a public roadway with buildings on one or both sides of the street. When a public street is labeled as a way, it generally means that it's a roadway that is off a main road or street. In this instance, the current Kenilworth Street is considered a public roadway, is on and is not a side street. Using the street suffix wouldn't be more accurate use of the street naming policy. Therefore, staff recommends modified approval of street name change 00323 to Kenilworth Street, to change Kenilworth Street to Firefighter Street.
Thank you. We don't have any comment cards. Is someone present to speak on this behalf? Okay. Is there any further discussion or questions for staff? If not, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, there are no further discussion. I move for modified approval for street name change 00323.
Commissioner Flickel, second.
With no further discussion, I'll ask that everyone cast their votes. Street name change has been tongue twisted today.
Yeah.
Has been approved with modified approval. Next up is the 2024 through 2028 capital improvement plan.
Mr. Chairman, we're first going to hear the report for the amendment to the 2024 to 2028 capital improvement plan. This report considers amendments to this year's CIP to consider additional requests and amendments to departmental submissions. As a part of the annual development of the CIP, section 6-104 of the city code requires each office, department, board, and the council, among others, to present to the City Planning Commission a list of all expenditures for permanent physical improvements, which it is making or proposes to make in the next 5 years. The capital requests in this report were not presented during the department public hearings held in July and August of this year. The list of amendments includes 9 projects from 3 departments, including the Department of Property Management, the Mayor's Office of Public Safety Support, and the City Planning Commission. Property Management is requesting capital funding to repair, maintain, and stabilize certain city properties, including the Sophie Gumbel House, the former VA hospital, and several criminal justice facilities. The Mayor's Office of Public Safety Support is requesting funding to harden the structure that houses the real-time crime center and renovate a portion of the building for a dormitory. The City Planning Commission staff have requested funds for 2 projects, the renovations of space in City Hall to accommodate 1 large hearing room and 1 small hearing room. This request was prompted by the public hearing the commission held in August on the 7th floor due to the unavailability of the council chamber and there being no other meeting spaces available. The requested meeting room would be shared with the Board of Zoning Adjustments, the Vieux Carre Commission, and the Historic District Landmarks Commission, which have similar issues with securing proper meeting spaces. The large meeting space would be roughly 4,000 square feet and equipped to provide comfortable in-person and virtual access to the public. Similarly, the commission staff is requesting a small hearing room to host various commission committees, such as the Design Advisory Committee, the Planning Advisory Committee, and all commissioner-led committees. Space would also be shared with the Vieux Carre Committee and HDLC's Architectural Review Committees. Like the requested large hearing room, this smaller space is proposed to have technology installed for presentations and live streaming. In conclusion, all of these projects that are presented in this amendment, In conclusion, all of these projects are present in this amendment to provide an additional public hearing for requests to be included in the 2024 through 2028 capital improvement plan. As an amendment to the full draft, this supplemental report does not need to be voted on or acted on, and these projects will receive a recommendation and the full draft of the CIP to be heard after this item, and we'll have more details about the proposed funding and master plan consistency. So basically, this amendment report is to provide a public hearing in advance of the full capital improvement plan.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission to staff? We don't have any comment cards, but no? Okay, well, thank you. We don't need to, we don't have to vote. Okay,
You'd like me to go into the full plan?
yes.
The staff is pleased to give a brief presentation summarizing the 2024 to 2028 capital improvement plan, including the process and responsibilities of the City Planning Commission as outlined by the charter. The capital improvement plan is a 5-year program for expenditures by the City of New Orleans for permanent physical improvements to the city. This presentation, I will provide a summary of expected revenues and recommended capital expenditures, and we will conclude with recommendations related to future capital priorities. Process for the CIP development begins with the Capital Projects Administration assisting city agencies in helping identify capital needs and project scopes. The agencies send capital projects requests to the CPC, and CPC staff holds public hearings with each individual agency. These meetings occur between July 18th and August 10th of this year. One of the main responsibilities of City Planning Commission staff is to certify that the approved projects are consistent with the master plan for the City of New Orleans, which can be found in the individual project requests within this report. The overview of funding sources for this year's CIP depict a total of approximately $786 million in funding. These funding projections represent a mix of FEMA reimbursements, brownfield and hazard mitigation grant funds, miscellaneous capital funds, and self-generated funds. Projects that have already received funding in past years are listed in ongoing projects in Appendix 1 and 2. This year, there are no new general obligation bond funds available to be programmed for the upcoming 5-year period. This slide gives an overview of expenditures by program type, which are program types the City Planning Commission has used for capital improvement planning in the past. No new capital funding is available for projects in the public safety, parks and recreation, or libraries and museums program categories. Nearly all of the funding for other program categories is from federal sources or generated through the operations of individual agencies. Capital funding for streets include approximately $285 million in FEMA reimbursements. All this funding goes through the Department of Public Works and will fund the continuation of the road work NOLA. The largest category for this year's capital improvement plan is for the Armstrong International Airport at approximately $487 million. Now that the new terminal is complete and operational, the airport is focusing its capital program on rehabilitating runways and taxiways, renovating the old terminal for reuse, and planning for a new intermodal center station and automatic people mover. The category of other public facilities includes an allocation of approximately $14 million. The majority of these funds come from the French Market Corporation and are slated for repairs for major buildings within the French Market and the Upper Pontalba building. The Department of Property Management is projecting the receipt of $1.35 million in miscellaneous capital funds from the sale of one city-owned site. The staff is recommending that these funds be allocated to fund the stabilization of the Sophie Gumbel House, the former 2nd District Police Station, and the Toro Shakespeare Home. The 2022 capital improvement plan recommended over $270 million in bond funds, and many of these projects have received funding. As this year doesn't recommend any additional bond funding, staff has revisited a list of its priorities. Despite these investments, which have been substantial, the capital funding requests received for the upcoming 5-year period highlight a sustained need for reinvestment in the city's infrastructure. These two charts show the city's needs for non-street related expenses. Recognizing that the city may have capacity to issue more bonds in the next coming years to finance capital projects, the staff has identified several priority areas to consider as potential capital improvement investments in future years. This list highlights major or common needs presented by requesting departments and identified by staff through this process. The first is the staff recommends continuing to identify sources of potential capital funding to supplement the city's general obligation bonds. More specifically, miscellaneous capital funds, law enforcement district funds, and brownfields grant opportunities. Miscellaneous capital funds are received through the disposition of city-owned property and are not typically a significant source of capital funding, but the funding can be useful for the repair of existing structures, and it's recommended for in this year's plan. Additionally, the disposing of city-owned property that serves no public use will relieve the city of its ongoing responsibilities for maintaining those properties. Staff also recommends exploring the opportunity to issue bonds through the law enforcement district. The last bond sale through the LED was in 2008 for $63 million, which was most of which funded the construction of the new parish prison. These funds can be authorized to repair and renovate buildings that house criminal justice agencies, some of which are in very poor condition. The criminal justice agencies located near Tulane Avenue and South Broad Street are requesting $71 million in capital improvements this year. And many of these requests have been in the capital plan dating back 5 to 10 years and are in dire need of funding. It's also, of course, a good time to mention the CPC's Brownfields program, which can provide much needed assistance for city initiated projects. Brownfields program is already engaged in 20 assessment projects for city-owned properties and has been awarded $2 million towards the remediation of the naval support activity site. Second priority is planning for the redevelopment and use of large city-owned properties and districts. Sites like the former VA and the Community Correctional Facility at 2800 Gravier Street are either vacant or being temporarily occupied, but have a massive amount of space for the city to utilize for its operations. Capital Projects is currently engaged in a space planning process for the former VA building that will be completed soon. Staff recommends a similar consideration of the Community Correctional Facility, which could solve a number of issues with office space and storage that many of the criminal justice agencies are currently experiencing. The city and the Sewerage and Water Board are continuing to invest FEMA reimbursements to fund streets and stormwater management. The Recovery Roads program is funded repairs citywide, and the city is starting to make the switch to greener infrastructure. Pervious paving and bias wells are becoming part of the regular street infrastructure throughout neighborhoods. Funding should continue to be prioritized for the implementation of green infrastructure projects and stormwater management features. And I think this has the added benefit of often making federal funding, state funding available, just as with our first priority to find supplemental funds for some of these capital projects. And finally, the staff recommends working with the current administration to develop housing priorities. The 2021 plan recommended $15 million in bond funds to fund 9 sites throughout the city for affordable housing. Some of these projects have started to come through City Planning Commission for recommendations on zoning and design entitlements. And the City Planning Commission is also working with other agencies to submit a grant application to the Department of Housing and Urban Development to further develop citywide housing policy. So this is obviously a priority, or should continue to be a priority for this commission and the city as a whole. And this concludes our presentation for this year's capital improvement plan. The next steps are that we are required by the charter to submit this plan, the adopted plan, to the mayor by October 15th. And then the city council will begin their process of having their annual budget here. And to the city council as well. We usually do that the day and prior to the hearing for the capital budget. With that, I'll like to take any questions.
Where are we on the extension requested for the FEMA money? I know this is a question I ask every year, the events, I know you're prepared, but you know, my concern has always been that we didn't spend that down fast enough, and it looks like we're needing an extension. So I'm wondering where we are with that.
We recently, a couple of weeks ago, and in adherence with the federal court order to move forward with the phase 3 OJC project, issued a construction notice to proceed to the contractor with a completion date of November 5. That's been submitted to FEMA for consideration to extend the period of performance. So right now we do anticipate approval of that extension, which would push
All of the
project.
projects.
Yes.
So how much are we looking at? I mean, there seems to be a big gap in what the settlement was and what's been spent down. So can you give us an idea wise and timeline wise?
No, Commissioner, you ask me that every year, and
Kind of important.
you do know, and I'm saying that to say, I apologize to you. I forgot to pull information together, but I will get it to you.
Okay, we have a little bit longer during our meeting here today, so maybe we can get that later today. Okay. Also, okay, that's pretty much it on the FEMA stuff. I just, it looks like the only other potential for us for capital projects funding is through general obligation bonds. So is there any indication that we are going to be letting or proposing more of that?
Yeah,
soon?
last month, we actually launched out on the sale of the balance of the 500 million of dollars that was approved by the voters. You know, we sold 300 million, appropriated that funding, and we're engaging the projects appropriated with that funds. Last month, we started the process to sell the balance, the 200 million in bonds that are left. So we are advancing that sale, hoping to have it done by the end of the year. The caveat and the challenge for us with that is, you know, as you're all aware, you know, COVID put everybody in disarray. It impacted us in terms of the costs of projects. Our projects went up substantially. Capital projects was averaging bids coming in 70% over budget. Now this year that has it's declined. We're still coming in at about 25 to 30% over. And if you've all been reading the news or listening to the media, you're aware of us having to postpone projects so that we could fund the OJC phase 3 project. We've had to move money to cover several FEMA funded projects as it's a priority for us to get those projects completed. So when we sell the 200 million, you know, some of that money is going to have to go back to the projects that we had to postpone. So, you know, as part of the challenge and the discussions that we will be engaging is, you know, how best to appropriate that 200 million as we have to look at projects that have been postponed versus projects, you know, that are in this current request.
And were there any capital outlay funds requested from the legislature, or those are matching funds, correct? Or all of them?
It depends. In most cases, they are matching funds, but we're in the process, we're going through that budgeting process right now with the state.
So, but none were proposed last session.
No, we didn't really get
Okay.
any additional capital outlay funding.
Okay, I'll let others ask questions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm just curious if the postponed projects that you're mentioning, are those also listed as the ongoing projects?
Yes.
And then, for example, you know, Mirabeau Gardens was something that was designed pre-COVID, was bid pre-COVID, but is still under bid and award. So is there a timeline or a deadline, or are we able to hold anyone's feet to the fire to make progress on projects that have literally been here for a number of years?
Well, the motivation for us to complete all of those projects is, of course, the period of performance. All federal funds have a period of performance associated with them. You can submit, you know, if you have a legitimate delay, which extends it, you know, we typically submit to get authorization to extend. So, you know, those are the motivations for us, especially given the fact that we're having more disasters in more places. We all know the issues the government is having at the federal level with funding. So those are our motivations to move projects forward.
Hi, could you speak specifically to the Mirabeau Garden status?
I cannot. That project is being managed through Resilience. If you can tell me specifically what you want to know, I can get that information and get it back to you.
I think it's a follow-up, just to, you know, like what is committed to it at this point, you know?
I'll get that information just in terms of the funding and the project
Okay.
status. I'll make sure to get that to you guys as well.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So in addition to that, you're gonna give us the amount of money that we have
Right,
yet
yeah.
to spend down on the FEMA settlement
Mhm.
and the realistic expectation of whether that's gonna be spent or not.
Yeah.
I mean, because asking for another extension, I mean, in the climate that you just described is probably not
Yeah.
hopeful.
And that is the assumption that we are all making, that this extension will be the last one.
Is that part of the postponed project as well?
Excuse
The
me,
Turo Shakespeare building or complex?
that building is currently not in our capital program. We issued a lease agreement with, I think it's HRI, maybe a couple of years ago, for them to bring the building back into commerce. I don't know exactly where that is. I can check and get you some information on that one as well.
And Commissioner Witchery, the city planning staff's recommending some miscellaneous capital funds for that structure, but that is to stabilize it and secure it. So to, I guess, get in a position to better prepare for redevelopment.
I guess, you know, looking at it, the biggest concern is just stormwater management and the line item for that. I mean, there's just so much going to the airport, and I get it. I know, you know, the airport is a huge economic driver for us. But we just need to be able to put more money into the stormwater management of the city.
Getting back to the airport, those are self-generated. Those are specific aviation bonds. We're not they aren't competing with the general obligation bonds or any other source that we've got. But it does look to me that, I mean, once the FEMA money's gone and we have no bond issue out, the only thing left are the aviation bonds and the French Market Corporation, which are both self-funding, and any assets the city decides to sell, which is usually very minimal. So we're looking at a pretty grim outlook for any future, you know.
Right. And you know, and that's, I think, why with the first priority that we outlined in this report, just the importance of finding a way to supplement that. I pointed out the law enforcement district funds, which from all of our research, you couldn't find that any bond issuance has been authorized or approved in, I guess, 15 years. As just pointing to some kind of way to fund some of these much needed improvements. There are many city facilities that are in dire need of repair.
Also, as a comment, when we sold the $500 million in bonds a couple of years ago, 2019, we could have actually, so we had more capacity. We could have sold 800 million worth. Our, credit rating is good, still good. So, as we consider, as we are spending down the bonds now, of course, in considering future bonds, I think we're going to have the capacity, to increase the amount that we pursue.
The Infrastructure Act.
Yeah.
Louisiana's probably gonna have the most money it will ever have, and this governor will be able to give out. So how will that affect our capital improvement plan?
Well, I hope in a positive way. We do have a team designated by the mayor's office, the IIJA team, I believe. They're within the Office of Resilience and Sustainability, and their primary focus is finding those opportunities for funding from that act. And so it is, they're actively working to secure funding that's provided for in that act. So.
That's it. No,
Thank you, Vince. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
thank you both. Next up is zoning docket.
Yeah.
Go
We
ahead.
do
We need a vote.
take a vote on. the capital
That
plan.
wasn't clear. There you go. Okay. So I'll be looking for a motion on the capital improvement plan amendment.
Confirm, this is just the amendment.
No, this
Plan.
would be the draft plan, the full
Thank you.
plan.
And are we gonna hear back from you after, we're gonna be here for a while? You said you would come back to us with that. Should we? Okay. I mean, we won't wait to vote on this, I guess, but we would like to hear some of that just for the record and for anyone who's interested enough to be listening to these reports. We appreciate it. Thank you. I'll move approval or to move this forward to council.
Is there a second?
Whitfield will second.
If there's no further discussion, we'll vote your machines. And the plan passes. Next up is. Next up is zoning docket item 07323.
Yes, this is a conditional use application. It's an effort to redevelop an existing gas station on Carrollton and Willow in an HUB1 district and the Carrollton Local Historic District. The proposal is to retain the existing pumps, but to demo the existing retail kiosk and the tunnel car wash. They are to be replaced by a 3-unit retail structure at the rear of the site. Despite the fact that there is tension between the auto-centric nature of a gas station and the goals of the HUB1 district to encourage walkable development in a historic context, this is an existing station and not a new one. The new construction is presumable substantial construction, so we are recommending provisos relative to zoning regulations for curb cuts and landscape. We are also recommending setback waivers for the new retail building, which are needed due to the location of the existing pumps, preventing the retail building from being near the front property line. The staff recommends approval, subject to 3 waivers and 8 provisos.
Thank you. We have one speaker card from Lynette Gordon. Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Annette Garden, 2439 West Bank Expressway. I'm sorry, 2439 Manhattan Boulevard, Harvey, Louisiana, 70058. I'm representing with Spectrum Designs and Engineering LLC on behalf of the client. And I just wanted to come before you today to tell you that we've actually had the total of 7 meetings with the neighborhood and the community. This project extends way prior before COVID. We decided the owner wanted to be very patient with the community to make sure that we were being, good neighbors. And one of the most important things is that we want to let you know that we are in agreement with the provisos that's being requested of us, and also along with the design recommendations. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. We have no additional cards. Are there any questions for staff or the applicant? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
Commissioner Flick will move for approval per staff recommendation. Commissioner Alexander will second.
Perfect. Great. We have a motion by Commissioner Flick and a second by Commissioner Alexander. There's no further discussion. Vote your machines. And the zoning docket item passes. Congratulations.
Okay, the next item is zoning docket 7423. Due to staffing limitations, staff recommends that the commission defer zoning docket 7423 to the October 24th meeting.
I am, are there any cards? No. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion for deferral.
I'm move for deferral of zoning docket 7423 per staff request to the October 24th CPC meeting.
And wait, why are we deferring this? Did the applicant request or?
No, the staff had staffing concerns about, you needed more time to review, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Alexander will second.
Okay, if there's no further question, we'll vote our machines. And zoning docket 07423 has been deferred. Next up is zoning docket item 07523.
Yes, the applicant has requested a deferral to the October 24th meeting, citing the opportunity to provide some additional written information to the commission to address the 3 required waivers. The applicant believes, the staff believes that the 2-week deferral will be sufficient to provide additional written documentation.
Thank you. I'm looking for a motion for deferral.
Commissioner Flick will make a motion for deferral to the October 24th meeting.
Second, Commissioner Stewart.
Okay, is there any further discussion or questions? If not, we'll vote our machines. The zoning docket 07523 has been deferred. Next up is zoning docket 07623.
Zoning docket 07623 is a request for a zoning change from SRD Suburban Two-Family Residential District to an SB2 Suburban Pedestrian Oriented Corridor Business District. The subject property, well, we're requesting a 2-week deferral for staffing issues as well.
Okay, we have one speaker card.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Williamson, Pastor Lisa from the Kaiser Baptist Church. I live at 5931 Congress, but the property is at 2801 Pite Street. This community is my community that I grew up in, that has been lacking some economic development. It's the Ninth Ward, where the Desire Housing Project used to be, and now it's called the Estates. I have a very keen interest in that community and helping to lift it. Bringing this a food stand there, I think will help with food scarcity, some healthy food, some economic development for the community, and hopefully some other people will see that and follow along. There are about 4 other pieces of property that the church has access to or that the church owns. And I'm looking to develop that as well to bring even more to the community. Now, I wasn't aware of the deferment for the meeting. Can I ask the question of why?
We were deferred on this case because the BZA docket, that's another slate of cases that we do. It was large this month. And with the size of that docket and the cases that we had 2 weeks ago, this one, actually, I'm finishing it up now. It will be done for the next one, but it wouldn't have been able to be done in time to be submitted to the board.
Okay, because as soon as you guys give approval, then we'll go forward with the business. And we've been waiting for this for quite a while. My sister and I, is actually my sister's that's going to be the owner of Early Bird Eats. It's going to be the name of the food container. So as soon as you can get that done and you guys approve it, we'll greatly appreciate that.
And I'm the person you've been talking to.
Ava?
Yeah, I know
yes,
how
good to see you,
invested you
Ava.
are. I'm gonna.
Thank you.
You're-
Thank you.
I just want to ask, when is the deadline for this report?
The CPC deadline will be December 9th.
Okay, so we've got time. And apologies that we weren't able to move forward today with your project. And hopefully we'll see you next month. Thank you for coming. No, that's not the deferral request. I was just making sure that we were not on deadline at the next meeting for this particular report. Would hate for that to be something as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Flick will make a motion for deferral to October 24th.
Second, Commissioner Stewart.
Is there any further discussion? If not, cast your votes. And the zoning docket has been deferred to October 24th. Next up is zoning docket item 07723.
Zoning docket 7723 is a request for a conditional use to permit established multifamily dwellings in an HURD2 historic urban 2-family residential district. The site is comprised of multiple lots that together total approximately 10,000 square feet. These combined lots create a rectangular shaped site fronting South Liberty Street near Louisiana Avenue. The property has been developed since sometime prior to 1951 with 4 double shotgun structures, a total of 8 dwelling units. This development pattern, a multifamily use across multiple principal buildings, is a pattern that has been seen historically in the immediately surrounding area. Due to a period of blight that led to a vacancy of all 8 units, originating sometime prior to the applicant's purchase of the properties,
The Department of Safety and Permits determined that the site lost its legal non-conforming status for multiple dwelling units in multiple buildings in a two-family zoning district. Based on this determination, the applicant is applying for a conditional use for established multifamily in order to rehabilitate these structures and reestablish the multifamily use. Sanborn maps indicate 4 structures with 8 units in 1951 and 1994. The Department of Safety and Permits has determined that no off-street parking spaces are required since the immediate previous use did not provide any legal off-street parking spaces. Based on this, the 8 required parking spaces are grandfathered to the site. The request is consistent with the master plan, the use standards for the established multifamily use, and the conditional use approval standards. In addition, the proposal would add more housing to the area at a time when the city has been struggling with affordable housing. This request was previously considered under zoning docket 7518. The application was approved by the City Planning Commission and City Council. However, the applicant did not submit final development plans by the required deadline, so the approval became void. The staff recommends approval of zoning docket 7723, subject to 4 provisos.
Thank you. We don't have a comment card. Is the applicant present? Okay. Hold on. He said he has an opposition card. Did you fill out a card? He said no. You can come on up to fill out a card. Commissioner, are there any questions for staff in the meantime? Okay, could you? Okay, thank you. Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Stephen Fulkerson, 3416 South Liberty Street, directly across the street from the property being talked about in this docket. In the past 2 years, I've lived across the street. Mr. Riggs, the owner of Liberty Cottages LLC, has told me that these properties will be worked on. They'll be done by the end of the year. And then at the end of the year, oh, they'll be done by April. It's constantly a pushing of the timeline. And the only time that they've been worked on was after the code of enforcement. The code enforcement department came and stuck a bright yellow notice on the house and said that fines would be coming. He immediately sprang into action and covered up some of the graffiti, took some dilapidated plywood off of the doors and windows. But it's become pretty clear that his only motivation for filing this permit is to get out of the crosshairs of the code enforcement department. I'm here today to hopefully deny this permit and let the code enforcement play out so that something up to current zoning and code standards can be built on that lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Riggs, how long have you lived there?
I'm Stephen Fulkerson,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. How long have you lived across from Mr. Riggs?
2 years now.
Okay. Go ahead.
Question for staff. Could you address that concern that this application could be just utilization of just a way to defer, to extend a blighted property to remain blighted, in order to have code enforcement not enforce violation of codes?
As I understood, I believe the member of the public is saying they would like to see the properties demolished and it built with something that would be allowable in the HURD2 district. However, what the applicant is seeking is to be able to have a established multifamily there. So they want to renovate the existing structures.
So what would be reassurance? So actually, this is going to give the applicant, if the city council approves this, the right to do the renovation of these properties with the modified zoning on the properties. But of course, that's up to the applicant to act on it, correct?
Correct.
So in fact, it could be a tool that's used to just defer neglect, continue neglect. I'm not putting this question to you. This actually may be something, if might ask Bob if you could help me with understanding how to reassure that if there is a way to, does giving this applicant a change in zoning, is there anything to prevent them from not acting on it and having it remain blighted for another extended period of time?
So I would suggest that the jurisdiction of the city planning commission is to look to see what is permissible, whether it complies with the standards that are within the zoning ordinance. Code enforcement is engaged with this property. And I don't know what that status is, and whether or not this will give them a grace period. So yeah, our recommendation is, does this meet the standards for an existing multifamily? Have they demonstrated that there was a former multifamily use there? Is it compatible with the neighborhood? Does it check all the land use boxes? And that's what our recommendation is based on.
Okay, thank you. So, I think that is, we're limited and it's not within the scope of our authority or anything to address, whether the applicant acts on this right away.
I'd like to remind you that the same commission approved this permit back in 2018, and it's fallen further into disrepair every day since then.
Yeah.
So the applicant doesn't have a good track record of acting on a responsible timeline.
Thank,
Go ahead.
was that a question, Director?
No, I'd like you to.
Okay, thank you. There are no more comment cards.
It's like there's someone else here to speak.
You can establish it. You can just slide over if it's easier for you.
Oh.
And just state your name and address for the record, please. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Johnny Robinson Jr. And my sister lives on that street right across from those renovations that what's his name? What's your name? Steven was talking about. And I've been in that area, where I was taking care of, she died. But I own the property now, right across the street at 34, 28, 26, and 28 South Liberty. And I've been noticing that area where Mr. Riggs is working. And seemingly to me, he's doing a pretty good job. He got a couple of those units that's already being rented out. And I kind of asked him about the other units. He didn't tell me anything about codes that may be holding him up, but it could be money too. I don't know. But I wanted to talk to him about that. But he's in the process of trying to get approval, I guess, to go it on with the other units that he's trying to refurbish for affordable rental. I haven't had a chance, like I said, to talk to him, but I have his information. And I thought he might be here today so I can hear, what's going on. But I guess I'm gonna have to call him to see what else is gonna happen. Because like I said, the units that are fully done now, they look good to me. And it's bringing up the neighborhood because they got a lot of stuff going up in that neighborhood. And they got some empty lots and, room for more. But like I said, I have to talk to Mr. Riggs to see, what's happening on those lines.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay.
I have another comment card for Jason Riggs. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Jason Riggs, Liberty Street Cottages. I apologize, I'm out of breath. I was running quickly to get here, but I was listening to a portion of the hearing while I was en route here. I do understand that there's concerns that this development has taken longer than it ever should have. And I'm sympathetic with those concerns, but development does take a while. I am all about preserving and restoring New Orleans quintessential housing stock, such as these blighted shotguns. And as this gentleman was saying previous to me, I have renovated 2 out of the 6 structures in this development, returned them to Commerce, and put life back into these old structures. They're fully occupied, the tenants are happy, and I'd like to, with your permission today, move on to renovating the other 4 double shotguns. One of the impediments I'm facing is that without this approval and permission, the bank will not give me the final approvals on my financing to do so.
Thank you. Any
Mr.
questions?
Yeah, Mr. Riggs, were you the applicant in 2018?
Yes.
What, could you tell us what happened?
Basically, things were gearing up for me to do the development, and originally the plan was to do all 6 structures at one time. And then prior to that happening, COVID hit. And so what I ended up doing with the resources that I had available were to shore up foundationally 2 of these 4 that are in question today, and then move on to the other 2, which were on a separate parcel of record, and fully renovating those, which became occupied on the 1st of this year.
Okay, just understand, I'm not in any way wanting to interfere with, I know processes that take a long time in terms of financing and getting approvals, but also building good faith in a community where so much, construction, bad faith has taken place and there's so much blight is key too. So I look for opportunities to try to get to the bottom of it and find out if this is something that's going to happen and be as it was presented, So thank you.
I stand before you here today and tell you that it will happen. It's imminent to happen. And I ask for your permission and approvals to help progress with that process.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I'm making a motion to approve zoning docket 077-23, subject to 4 provisos.
There's
Mr.
second.
Alexander will second.
Is there any further discussion?
I just want to say that our intention is to increase housing stock, affordable housing stock in the city, and historic preservation. And that's what I'm hoping and having faith that you will move forward with your plans.
Thank you. I will.
I want to thank the neighbors.
Before I vote to come in, I know you're taking time out of your busy day and no one likes to see blight, and we have blight all over the city. The construction costs have just gone crazy over the last few years, and there's so much in terms of compliance before you even get to bring a unit, into Commerce. So I appreciate your patience and thanks for coming out today.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, we'll vote our machines. One person. Who didn't vote? 7. No. Oh. No. Okay. Zoning docket 07723 passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next up is zoning docket item 07823.
Yes, the applicant is requesting a 30-day deferral as they would like to expand the footprint and intensify the daycare. They need the deferral so they can provide updated plans and so staff can provide adequate public notice. Due to the need for additional information, the staff recommends that the commission defer zoning docket 7823 to the November 14th meeting.
Oh, wrong one.
Again, this is from the applicant, the request? Okay.
Okay, there are no comment cards. I'm looking for a motion.
I move that we defer until November 14th for zoning docket 07823.
Commissioner Flick seconds.
There's no further discussion. We'll vote our machines. Zoning docket is deferred. Next up is subdivision docket 12723.
Subdivision docket 12723 is a request by the Ernest and Moriel Convention Center to reconfigure 3 large undeveloped tracts that are situated near the convention center. They're bounded by Chapatulas, Melpanimi, Annunciation and Thalia Streets. The proposal, which will create 2 lots, also includes a minor alignment of Melpomene Street and is part of the larger River District redevelopment or River District Development Plan. The subject site is located within an MU2 mixed-use, high-intensity zoning district, and the proposed lots comply with that district's use and dimensional requirements. Both proposed lots comply with section 5(1)(b)(1) of the subdivision regulations, which requires all new lots to comply with applicable CZO regulations. Due to the complexity of the River District development, the survey for this re-subdivision proposal is a preliminary preliminary survey. An ongoing work in progress as each of the various departments and agencies submit their recommendations. To date, Public Works, Property Management, the Addressing Division of the Department of Safety and Permits, and the Sewerage and Water Board have submitted comments that have all been forwarded to the applicant for revision of the survey. The proposal will be presented at the Planning Advisory Committee tomorrow, at which time additional feedback from all those departments plus Parks and Parkways will come out of that. Accordingly, the staff recommends tentative approval of subdivision docket 12723, subject to the 10 provisos cited in the staff report and any others as may be deemed necessary as a result of tomorrow's PAC meeting.
Thank you. Is there an applicant present?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. Todd James with Broadmoor LLC, 2740 North Arnold in Metairie. But also, we've presented to you guys in the past as a part of the Greater River District Development. So as you're aware, our company is one of the partners in River District Development team. This is the first part of 2 applications that you guys see in front of you. This is for the first phase of the development, which does address what is now the proposed Topgolf facility. This is the first part of our retail development component as we start to advance the next phase of this package. Echoing the point that Ms. Jones brought up, we're in full support of where the staff report is, even with the tentative approval, because we are continuing to work with DPW as well as real estate and records, because this is, as she mentioned, tied to the larger project. So there are also other moving pieces that we're still working through in the next coming weeks as we stay on track for the first part of this development coming online and starting construction, in the next 45 to 60 days. That's my comments for this one right now.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, we have a few cards in opposition. Just a reminder that each of you will have 2 minutes. First up is Brian Horridge. Okay, it's seating time. Okay, well, next up is May Lau. And you have 2 cards seated, so you'll have a total of 6 minutes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
I'm actually a resident of New Orleans for almost 15 years on Napoleon. That's pretty much the first house I've been to. I've been living to since I've been to New Orleans. I love this city. The reason I'm here today is because for the relocation of the Maple Main Street in order to fulfill the outdoor amusement facility for the Topgolf, my first concern is how can a decision be made to relocate a street without a proper traffic study being done? This is close to a major entrance, the exit for the Port of New Orleans. And at least, I didn't see in the preliminary staff report, I didn't see a traffic study was conducted to justify whether or not, relocating that public street makes sense. I think Topgolf project contradicts with what the developer has said to the convention center, to this body, to New Orleans City Council, and widely reported in the media since 2019. The first priority for the River District will be housing. Yet, this project displays affordable housing. The city of New Orleans in the middle of an affordable housing crisis, we all know, as Commissioner Kelly mentioned earlier. In 2019, Governor John Bel Edwards killed the Topgolf project as not a good deal for the city and the state. I ask, what has changed since then to now make it the first and top priority in which supposed to be a new neighborhood for this development? The developer lack of commitment is evidenced in several documents signed and approved by the Convention Center Board. I have a copy of the Master Development Agreement for each of you, where the developer proposed and the Convention Center Board approved that the parcel 1A will be a 300 residential units. Parcel 1B will have 220 mixed income housing, at least 110 of the units supposed to be affordable housing. Housing was a major part of their proposal, and I'm sure it played a large role in their winning the RFP. But now, breaking this promise, they're asking you to relocate a street so that parcel 1A and 1B can be developed into Topgolf Entertainment Complex, thus delaying or possibly not even building over 500 housing units. Important note, is the City Commission plan aware there was a side agreement between Topgolf, RD&I, and the Convention Center? The side agreement states, if RD&I exercise its rights to terminate the existing master development agreement, Topgolf sublease remains in effect. This is basically saying if RD&I is unable to build the rest of the River District for whatever reason, the housing, the green space, the Civil Rights Museum, and all the things that was made it a true neighborhood, RD&I can walk away and the Convention Center must honor the Topgolf lease. What I'm referencing here is not a suspicion. My statements are based on a side agreement, yes. The record indicated it's titled side agreement, dated May 1st of this year. Is the public truly aware of this? So the developer will continue to make money, but our citizens will not get the housing units promised. In addition, we have for you numerous articles reporting on when Topgolf facility is located in or near residential area, it has negative impacts in the surrounding residents' quality of life. Main concerns were bright lighting in the nighttime, after-hour noise, traffic issues, and of course, a good night's sleep after a busy day. We didn't see any of these concerns were addressed in the staff report. Again, there is not even a mention of traffic study in the preliminary report. I would like to humbly request that you suspend the rule to allow me to provide you a copy of the side agreement I just read to you. And I have a copy for everyone. Again, I thank the commission for its time today. I leave you with this. The developer promised to build a neighborhood centered on equity and housing. This process has far from equitable. Nothing about what's been done so far suggests it will be a neighborhood. I ask you not to approve this item or delay them till concerns relates to the quality of life for the residents in that area, affordable housing and traffic study are addressed. And please allow the community have the opportunity to raise any and all questions may have. Truly, thank you for your time. And again, I ask you to suspend the rules to allow me to distribute the documents.
Thank you.
I'd like to move to suspend the rules and please receive the documents that the speaker has.
Yep.
Commissioner Flick will second.
All in favor?
Aye. Need a vote.
We're not. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Lau, could you come back and state your name and address for the record, please?
May Lau, 3015 Napoleon Avenue, New Orleans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So we're going. So we had a motion.
You need to repeat the motion to
Yes.
please waive the rules to receive the documents the last speaker presented.
Commissioner Flick seconded.
There's no further discussion. We'll vote on machines. Yes, so the next card I have is Charles Nicholson.
Good afternoon, Charles Nicholson, speaking on behalf of the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance and Housing NOLA.
And could you state your address for the record, please?
Sorry, 4640 South Carrollton Avenue, Suite 160. We advise CPC that Housing NOLA has rescinded support of this project until we can be reassured that affordable housing commitments will be honored. We formally notified the convention center and the developers several months ago that they no longer had our support. While we met with developers, our fears haven't been swayed. It's troubling that in the face of an insurance crisis, homelessness crisis, and the growing effects of climate change, that this development would choose to begin with what is in essence a luxury component. This is particularly troubling when one considers how much public support and resources are required for this project. The parts of this project that should come first are the ones that provide the most public benefit, and that is not a driving range for tourists. We urge all policymakers to put people first by putting housing first and reflect on the failure of this development team to demonstrate their understanding of the people's needs and how to balance that against their development priorities. Last week, Housing NOLA released its 8th annual report card that assessed the state of housing in New Orleans with a failing grade. That failure is rooted in many mistakes and decisions, and all of those decisions resemble this one. The needs of the few are prioritized over the needs of the many. The needs of multinational corporations and out-of-state developers are addressed with public resources in support of an economy based in trickle-down economics and not one that will create a healthy and resilient New Orleans worthy of our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have David Baird.
My name is David Baird, 601 Orange Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. We're going to request that these two items be deferred to the future. At this point in time, we are engaged with discussions with Representative Mandy Landry, who was trying to obtain us a commitment to meet with the DOTD. This project is going to adversely affect our historic structure, which is the oldest building uptown New Orleans, built prior to 1760. during the Jesuit occupation of New Orleans. In that, years ago, we were given a commitment from Stacy Head when she was a council person here in the city that all efforts were going to be looked at and to relocate the truck route from its existing path along the river from a religious street all the way up to Felicity. As the Jackson Avenue Ferry has no longer working at that site, there is no longer a need to have the Felicity Street opening at the flood wall be the entrance point for truck traffic. One of the big items here is to come up with a plan that would allow this truck traffic to enter, get over the flood wall at some point in this undeveloped property. And we humbly seek a deferral here so that we can reach out and see if there isn't some other alternative as to where the truck route could be located.
Thank you. We have no more cards in opposition. You're allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you for that. Couple points I'd like to address that, because I know that there was points of opposition that I think need to be clarified. So first, I'm gonna address the lease commentary as it pertains to the Topgolf parcel and it as a leave behind on that package. That was when we were in the due diligence period on a development package. Since that time, RDNI has executed and has completed its due diligence period with the convention center, with established parameters of us making a priority the neighborhood first in terms of how River District is going to come online. A couple legislative and policy tools that have come in place within the last 45 days. One was a CEA that was between the convention center and the city of New Orleans to address traffic and traffic resolution. That was able to realign and reprioritize roughly $6 million in escrow funds in order to work and prioritize the traffic report. We've already submitted the first round of the traffic report when we did the text amendment that came in front of you guys back in December. So that has actually started. We've already completed the second round of that traffic impact analysis, which we're actually going through our stakeholder engagement rounds in the next 30 days with the Port of New Orleans, Tulane University, who has riparian rights on this site, continued work with DOTD, which has been ongoing for a little over a year and a half, as well as other parties to help prioritize and come up with a strategy on how to help manage traffic along Tchoupitoulas. That's one mechanism. The second item that has happened is working through the Economic Development District and the modifications that's been going forward with that process. That's something that RDNI and the Convention Center are working together on. One key part in terms of financing projects like affordable housing and the 900 units, including 50% of which are dedicated to affordable and workforce housing, need some form of retail development associated with this development in order for us to help fund the gap on that project. So in order for us to bring this in sequence, that's why you're seeing retail first, as well as the recent announcements that you just saw for the Shell building and its relocation into the River District site to help fortify the site in order to help make priority to establish the prioritization and continuation of this project being neighborhood oriented first to what we proposed to the Convention Center back in 2020. I know my time is out, but I could go on for a really long time in response to some.
I have a question. So is the intention to relocate the affordable housing units to a different parcel and develop these parcels? Will this be specifically for Topgolf?
So these two parcels that's for this package, the first one is purely to Topgolf and surface parking because of the sequence of when the development comes online. The affordable and workforce housing have always been set as a priority to go on to what we refer to as parcels 5 and 6, which is actually in the re-subdivision docket 129-23. So yes, if you're going to look at this in the order of how you guys received it, it would be painted in pictures if though that's not priority 1. No, that's actually why it's separated into 2 applications because they're not contiguous parcels.
And then will there be a movement on, I mean, I know that a traffic study was completed. I do recall that, but at what point do those get implemented, or when will the final impacts be completed?
So that's actually ongoing now, and that's why I made the reference to the second part of that traffic study. The first time around, DPW and DOTD, as well as the port and Tulane asked us to look at this and to redefine the parameters of that study area. We did change that footprint to try to have a better sense of how traffic impacts would be, how traffic would impact the entire site, as well as it going well beyond just River District's footprint. So that is actually, like I mentioned, that's ongoing right now, and it's a big part of what we just were able to negotiate between the convention center and city as a part of that traffic CEA, with the intent of using those funds to go for local match funds through regional planning commission, as well as even looking at federal grants applications across a multitude of cabinet sections.
I know these are pretty standard, but you've been through all the provisos.
Yes, and
Okay.
totally in support of the 10 provisos that's on this one.
Okay.
On the other pack, I'll get to 129 when we get to
Okay.
that. Sorry.
All right. Thanks.
Are there any other questions? If not, I am looking for a motion. Oh,
I just
Commissioner
have
Lund,
a question. How does the traffic impact study, either phase of it, impact the historic structure that the gentleman was speaking about?
So, and I've talked quite a bit to those gentlemen as well on this. That traffic study, how that will change is how we're looking at potential, what we have in concept, subject to further review and coordination with DPW and DOT. We're looking at how to change the signalization along Tchoupitoulas to help mitigate how truck traffic interacts with Tchoupitoulas, and particular impacts with their property at Race and Religious. We understand and see the sensitivity of it, but that's largely tied to port traffic and port traffic operations. One thing that we've actually looked at, and this is kind of more pertinent to the 129 application, but I think it's important for everybody to still hear this piece. We've looked largely at how truck traffic has traversed through Tchoupitoulas to Irado and past Uterp streets, and how it even gets onto US 90. One thing that we've learned is that the majority of traffic, the truck traffic that slows down on Tchoupitoulas, if we were all leaving uptown headed towards the CBD, is actually being impacted by how car traffic uses Henderson to get onto elevated US 90 to get to the West Bank. So one thing that we're still working through is how do we get into that dedicated right-hand turn lane, as well as other mechanisms to reduce the amount of light cycles that happen at Henderson and Tchoupitoulas, as well as how the entrance of Uterp and Tchoupitoulas may interact or benefit the potential impact the Topgolf entrance, as well as getting to his structure at Orange Street. How do we actually slow truck traffic down so he doesn't have the larger vehicles moving at a high rate of speed, causing vibration for their structure? That's the level that we've gone to and trying to understand and appreciate how to help better mitigate some of the impacts from some of these historic structures, especially along Race and Tchoupitoulas.
Okay, thank you. Another question. So on both these parcels, 1A and 1B, right? 1A, 1B,
Yes.
they were slated to include mixed income housing, right?
That was when we had the initial 2020 package. And in the middle of us going through the selection with the RFQ and RFP process with the convention center, market conditions changed. We looked heavily at trying to figure out how to move Grocer there to put the residential on that site, as well as a whole host of other mixed use options. It was beyond impossible to identify retail anchors to go to that site. After we started to do further development through the traffic study, in the first round, we started to realize that the better traffic counts for the mixed use component, which is heavily focused on the grocer and the residential side, really was actually better served on the river side of Tchoupitoulas and not the lake side of Tchoupitoulas. Another piece that came into that is, how do I move vehicles into the parcel 1A site, which how we initially set this up. If we would have kept that package in place, you would have saw more light cycles going on at the proposed Tchoupitoulas and Henderson intersection, which would have slowed down truck traffic even further on Tchoupitoulas. But now with this mechanism, we're able to remove the number of lights along Chop, help to reduce the amount of truck traffic. And here's the other piece. If I'm gonna have a grocer or on any other form of mixed retail component on the lakeside of Tchoupitoulas, I'm now increasing vehicular traffic coming into that site. Going to a use that's more in alignment with this one, like that we're talking about with the Topgolf site, actually reduces where those vehicles come in. Now it limits that interaction where they're going to be able to use Melphamine to go to that parking lot. Topgolf is going to be able to provide shuttle service to move people from that parking lot to their entrance at U-Turf, but also then allow for just vehicular drop-off points to only happen at their U-Turf entrance. So inherently, we get a higher performing retail tenant, which helps to generate taxes. Because the one thing I'll mention, that project is not asking for incentives from the city of New Orleans in any way, shape, form for their project. That comes in, that generates the tax revenue dollars in order for us to come back and do the supplemental bonding packages to support initiatives like the Housing Alliance is advocating for. This is just part of the process when we get into such a large scale development, especially in the trying times we've been going through since the pandemic and how the market has been impacted.
Well, what are your thoughts about why the Housing Alliance would withdraw their support at this time?
They did this before when we went through when we first announced that Topgolf was going to be coming to the site. That was when they first made us aware of it. We had since met with them. We respect that they have not changed their position on it because again, we're waiting to go through the financial process to get the housing component online. If anybody's familiar with how projects are going out for the NOFA through Louisiana Housing Corporation. That just went through its latest round within the past 2-3 weeks. So we're in the queue with that same application process so we could start that funding initiative through that group.
Are you still under the same obligations?
Yes, that is and here's the thing, back to what the point of opposition was with regards to us deferring housing. We were in a due diligence period. We're past that point. For lack of a better term, we've gone hard on this development. We've made our initial rent payment to the convention center, and as a part of that agreement, we're required to provide that 50% of our housing units as affordable and workforce. That's our commitment. And I mean, I'm sorry, if you look at the makeup of our team, especially our partners, they are largely focused in affordable and workforce housing, as well as how do we appropriately do commercial development. This is our commitment because we all do live here.
Right, so I'm gonna ask a question just because I'd like to know too. Tell me how having Shell be interested and maybe committed to at this point? The Shell.
Yes, that lease agreement.
That lease agreement is signed?
Yes, that lease agreement is signed. I could tell you, I've personally flown to Houston already to work with their team to start pushing that project forward as well. And again, that's further commitment to move jobs and as well as other components of how we promote further attraction, because it's this weird situation in any mixed use development. Who's gonna show up first? Who's gonna be the first one to be willing to go on the line, assign to do a lease, especially when nothing else is around? That makes it really hard in these packages. But yes, they are formally committed, and I'm working actively with them to this day, even this afternoon when I leave here.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate how thoroughly you can explain all of this, and I do not know the specifics of the Shell lease, but how was that included in your original projections for revenue, design, engineering for the project? You didn't have anything like that kind of a tenant, did you?
We did, actually.
Okay.
We had always projected a roughly 150 to 145,000 square foot office facility. We were hoping to have more of a multi-tenant package, but if you know anything right now in commercial retail markets, you cannot get a multi-tenant building financed, period. It is only single tenant occupancy buildings that are being able to touch the market, hence why that project's online.
Yeah, no, I know this is great news for the project, and just want to be sure that the project stays on track for this, for the community benefits that were included in part of what, maybe not incentives that were offered to you, but really all of the conditional use. There were conditional use waivers. There was quite a bit of cooperating with the developers to try to make this happen in light of how complex it was, how good it would be for the city. So being under the microscope for this is appropriate. You know?
That's why you see in my initial comments, I kept it minimum because I know that there were some points of opposition, and I really just wanted to take the time to address those concerns.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. James, I have a few questions for you. Can you tell me when the traffic study will be finalized and completed?
So the latest version of it, actually, the latest round is actually complete right now. I'm circulating it to our the 7 stakeholders that we're meeting with. We're doing 2 rounds of stakeholder engagement with those key folks in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'm trying to set final dates now.
Okay. And then you made mention of the Topgolf, how it funds the affordable development. So could the River District go forward without the Topgolf development?
I could tell you right now, that's our key anchor, quite honestly. It's the makeup of how this works. Like I said, if we would have been able to identify more commercial tenants to resemble the same type of revenue model, that would have been different, but the market didn't support it.
All right, and then my last question, like what impacts would the meeting tomorrow with the Planning Advisory Committee have on what's before us now?
Not much, because I think a lot of it has already been addressed in what were the 10 provisos that we know we had to do further engagement on this 127-23 package. We are pretty much in alignment with DPW has outlined as some of their concerns. There's some tweaks we want to work with them on as it pertains to how Melphamine bends at the back of the Soleil Apartments, but pretty much everything else seems to be in alignment. Our engineers have already been coordinated with Sewage and Water Board. I'm working extensively with Entergy on their overhead utilities and how that's being rerouted. So we've been working pretty diligently with everybody involved.
Thanks.
I think it's just the nuance of the timing of today's date versus tomorrow's PAC hearing.
I just had a question again about Topgolf. What is the quality of life of people who are going to live there with Topgolf?
Okay. So one thing I want to address that I think helps to get to your concern, that was a comment earlier, the lighting or the perception of light pollution from the site. The actual location of the building, when you look at how how Topgolf initially placed their siting, the building itself actually orients itself towards the north. That actually takes what would be perceived as some form of LED lighting impact and throws it strictly to the field. I don't have a lot of the details inside the resub because I genuinely didn't think that was going to be a big part of this piece, so I apologize. But a lot of the current landscape actually helps to mitigate a lot of the impacts. You already have the Soleil Apartments parking garage. That's on the backside of the site. That building itself actually screens a large part of what would be considered the hitting area or their outfield. The parking lot is actually closer to what's the larger concentration of open residential development. So if anybody from the apartments, whether it be the Soleils or the Delano on Annunciation Street, they're more seeing the surface parking lot, which would still follow the standard site design requirements. But as it pertains to light pollution or even sound, a lot of Topgolf's technology has changed quite a bit in some time. I mean, think about it, the change just from going from halogen light bulbs to LED with directional LED and even being able to focus in how the photometrics of that equipment can focus purely onto their hitting area actually helps to reduce how some of those lighting impacts would have addressed other neighborhoods, especially in the 20-year plus history of Topgolf.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion. Did you complete a card? No, sorry, the public comment, public comment portion is closed. Sorry about that. Yes.
I'll move to approve. Oh, sorry.
Hello. Is there a question?
Me, no.
Okay.
I do have a question for, is there any reason we cannot look at the following subdivision request and look at them both together?
Yeah, we're gonna have to vote on them separately. What's that?
Okay, as indicated, I think there is an order here that, you know, is not convenient for everybody, but we need to start somewhere. And I think that this report is thorough, and I was satisfied with the responses and to our concerns and to the concerns here. and move approval with the 10 provisos in place, the tentative approval with the 10 provisos.
Is there a second?
I have a question about the motion. There may also be some additional provisos from tomorrow's meeting, correct? Tomorrow's Planning Advisory Committee, there may be additional provisos added. Do we need to put that in the motion?
I'd ask our director to comment on that.
That is certainly, if you want to add that to the list of provisos, that can be done.
We don't know what they are yet.
You don't. So what I would suggest is if there are provisos that substantially depart from what you have before you, we would bring it back.
Okay.
It's one of the things.
Okay,
Commissioner Alexander, I just wanted to second the motion if it's still on the floor.
yes.
It is.
Yep.
We've never done it that way before, and I don't see that it's necessary. So I think that we can, go forward with the way the staff has recommended.
Commissioner Brown, can you put your machine? Great.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Brown and seconded by Commissioner Alexander. Is there any further discussion? If not,
I have one question on the motion. So if we do approve this and then something comes out of the meeting tomorrow, at that point, what happens? If it differs from what we're hearing now.
So recall that we are in, if there's a proviso, and I'm assuming there is, that the motion incorporates the PAC provisos, or does it not?
Well, I had not originally, just because we've not done that before. I didn't know that that was something new to this particular subdivision that is of concern, that we think something that will happen tomorrow is necessary. That perhaps we hear from the staff on that.
What I would suggest is that anything that comes out of PAC tomorrow will actually fall under one of the existing provisos.
That's good for me. Thank you. I'll just keep my motion as it is.
And I will second again.
with no further discussion, we'll vote our machines. And the subdivision docket has tentative approval. Next up is subdivision docket 12923.
Subdivision docket 12923 is the companion piece to this case you just heard, which was 12723. This site, it's adjacent to the first site. This proposal is for 13 lots to be carved out of. I think there's 6 large tracts. They're going to reconfigure those tracts to create 13 larger lots, in addition to either creating new streets or perhaps reestablishing streets that were there, 50, 100 years ago, and either develop new street rights of way or reestablish the streets that used to be there decades ago. That's not the right slide, but yeah, back one. There you go. Those are the sites. Those are the sites for 12923. And they're just south of the ones that you just voted on. That graphic does not show all of the proposed streets. I'm not real sure where that came from, but Let me see, let me take a look in my staff report because that just doesn't look right. That's not my graph. One moment, please. All right. In the staff report on page, and I know that's not helpful if it's not up there, but nevertheless, on page 2 of the staff report, there is a small aerial photograph. There's 2 aerials. One of them is smaller and it's each proposed parcel or each proposed tract where there's going to be new streets put in. That's the graphic that kind of tells the story. I'm not real.
So just for everyone's information, Haley is working to pull up the staff report, so it'll show up on the screen with the proposed subdivision.
There it is.
Yeah.
Page
The one you want?
The smaller of the 2, that's the representation. That's the representation of the new street grid or whatever you want to call it. That's it. To continue. This is also part of the River District development, proposing 13 new lots. And the issues are pretty much the same at this site as with the others, or with the previous one. Like I said, the difference being the number of lots being created and the fact that there are, unlike the last one, which is Melpomene already exists and they're proposing a minor realignment. This is actually brand new streets. Okay, that's the essential difference. This is going to be some brand new street rights of ways that do not currently exist. Let's see what else here. Everything else is pretty much the same as the last one. We're still waiting for additional feedback from all the departments. It's going to be seen, it's going to be presented at PAC tomorrow. The survey is it's in a work in progress. Yes, that's pretty much it. Like I said, there's no need to reinvent the wheel because most of the issues here, you've already talked through them on the previous case.
Thank you. We don't have a comment card, but Mr. James, would you like to speak briefly?
Yeah, sorry about that. Todd James again, Broadmoor LLC, 2740 North Arnold in Metairie. Sorry, there you go. And maybe to kind of help give some backup to what Ms. Jones was presenting, this does not change in any way from what you guys initially saw as a part of the text amendment proposal for River District. So it is the continuation of what is proposed UTURP as well as Ray Street and how we're connecting Convention Center Boulevard to South Peters. One thing that is different within this re-subdivision application, and then there's a note there to it, there's the standards of what we would have from what we would create as a public right-of-way. And there's a provision in here on a request for a waiver of us to include the 4-foot wide sidewalk condition at these streets. The reason why that request is there is because we're treating this package in a very unique perspective that what we have proposed right now is moving the property lines in closer to the curb line for each block. The reason why we did this in our package is that we're trying to now utilize what would traditionally be part of the public right-of-way and make more of a public activation at that site, which ties back into some of the public benefit conversation points we had before about stormwater management as well as public open space. if you help us out in that situation as it pertains to the waiver of that requirement, we can then now activate the sidewalk condition. So think of, instead of having the parklet condition you see across town, we can now put outdoor seating as well as other forms of outdoor activation to help make the site more attractive as we start to work on the ground floor development packages on these verticals. So that's the only thing that's acutely different from what you saw in application 127 versus what we've been describing beforehand.
I want to make sure I understand it. So the waiver would be for sidewalks on the perimeter, 4-foot sidewalks, in order to allow the recreational fields to come like to the street, no setback, no sidewalk or setback. And that would allow greater public seating, outdoor public seating, right?
So there's a couple things. It creates outdoor public seating. It actually allows our civil engineers and landscape architects to work in a much more dynamic way to even deal with how to address gradient changes because of the BFE requirements. When we initially started this project, I was considering to try to pursue waivers for base flood elevation and drop them to 18 inches. Well, with the cost of insurance and everything else, we've gone a different approach. So we're sticking to whatever the minimum BFE requirements would be for each parcel. So because of that, we're trying to create a space where the entire sidewalk, because traditionally you would have an 8-foot wide right of way from back of curb to a property line. That requirement, we're not. That sidewalk is still going to exist, but it's going to exist on public property, on private property that RDNI and its vertical developers will be responsible for maintaining.
Okay.
And the other pieces, then stormwater management elements can be introduced into that part of the area and count towards the general application of what we're doing from a stormwater management and aggregate for the entire district.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sir? So can you describe what kind of housing is going to go on these lots?
So if you're looking at the, I'm gonna refer to the 4 red columns to the left. That top portion is still parcel 3. That's the convention center's parking lot. That's still some form of mixed use activation that we're considering, some type of public-private partnership with the convention center. The next parcel below that is parcel 2, where the Shell office building is going to go. The 2 that are at the bottom that are fronted between UTERP down to Orange Street is where we're focusing the first phase of the affordable and workforce housing residential. And now the third parcel that's currently being looked at is what we refer to as parcel 7, is the riverbound parcel that's on the perimeter would be proposed Front Street, the extension of Orange, Convention Center Boulevard, and Race.
And
So
will,
that's the 3 parcels that we're including the mixed income and affordable housing units.
and will that be in like doubles, singles, buildings, or?
So this is all multifamily buildings that are all mid-rise, high-rise development. Again, that just gets into the cost standpoint. Once we get into a taller building, the cost per square foot jumps. So we're trying to get these other projects online to help offset that gap to get those buildings online.
And then the other lots that are not housing, like
There's the big parcel, the one that's up closest to the convention center is not within River District's control. That is still convention center land. We're just carrying the administrative responsibility of handling the re-subdivision parcel. And that was the proposed convention center hotel site.
and these are new streets that are proposed.
Correct. So it's the extension of the existing street grid. Just anecdotally, I was actually looking at some of the historic street grid in this site. It was totally different back in the 1930s and even prior to, where this was pretty much all rail yard and much tighter street grids that were built within this site. But what we're doing is just trying to extend what is those existing view sheds to the river from, like I mentioned, UTERP and Race and Orange.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there, oh, go ahead.
Are any of the existing streets cobblestone streets?
The only one that has some remnants of cobblestone right now is at Race, but it's pretty broken up. And I think the part of the reason why is because of the old River Center, the old casino building that was at the foot of at the river at that location. Some of that street was pretty much pulled up. If you look at some of the existing aerials in that site now, you see some weird street shapes that exist in that area. So you may have existing cobbles in those areas, but it's not truly historic to the site. Some of it is actually repurposed cobbles that are being used. And what we're looking at right now, what has become an issue for us is looking at accessibility standards. When we get into these cobblestone streets and trying to put them into accessible routes, they become more problematic than helpful. So we're trying to figure out how to use them and either donate the cobbles that may fall within the site and give them back to DPW so that they could use them on future restoration projects, or figure out how to implement them in some of the public spaces that we have throughout the site. But we're still working on identifying quantities of what exists throughout the development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will there be some sort of a landscape plan that we'll see at some point, or some sort of, because I do wonder about when you're having all these mixed use developments with something as intense as a Topgolf next to this mixed use residential and walkability that you're trying to do with your sidewalks. I mean, you know, how are we gonna get connected to the river for people to who actually live there? How are like their recreation, like how is that addressed, you know, their connection to the river? And there've been so many talks about that in the past.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know like how your development is addressing some of these.
So that actually comes back to what I mentioned earlier about that change in how we're doing the setback condition and where what the setback condition and how it's now inside the private side. What we're trying to, that's actually where we reinforce the pedestrian connection. So the big part of what was already an agreement and a fair share agreement between the convention center and some of the other stakeholders, which actually set the servitude and easements for these streets some time back, well before RD9 was a glimmer, I guess, at that point, was to make sure that those connections were preserved. Now, coming back to when I mentioned earlier about the traffic report, there's a couple mechanisms that we're trying to look and even trying to deal with the activation of the Triangle Park that's at Chapatoulas and UTERP, and how to allow that to be a further pedestrian connection from everyone who's on the lakeside of Chapatoulas. But again, that's still a work in progress with DPW to confirm where we can put signal controls in so we could promote that pedestrian connection across the development. But again, it's the key part is not just connection into our site, but hopefully down the road as the riverfront continues to get developed further, how we can still, well, in another piece, these streets align with some of the existing gates that are inside the flood wall. So you still have that connection ability at those points as well. So it's there and a big part of how we set our design guidelines and standards within RDNI and how we review every vertical developer's proposal as they come online. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
Approve staff recommendation at subdivision docket 129-23.
Second.
Are there any final questions or comments for staff or the applicant? If not, we'll vote our machines. Subdivision docket passes. Good luck. Next up is subdivision docket 132-23.
Hopefully this one is more simple. Subdivision docket 132-23 is a request to re-subdivide lots X, Y, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, lot A and part of lot 2 into new lot 20A. This site is essentially the Yield College Inn and their associated parking. And they're seeking to consolidate all the existing lots. Because of the way the CZO was worded, technically Fig Street will become the new frontage, but functionally Carrollton will remain the frontage here. For these reasons, staff recommends approval of subdivision docket 132-23, subject to one proviso.
Thank you. Is that Oh, thank you. We don't have any cards as an applicant present. Could you come up and state your name and address for the record, please?
Liz Gullett with LK Harmon Architects, 6238 Argonne Boulevard in New Orleans, and I can answer any questions you may have. Can you hear me?
Yep. Any questions for the applicant or staff? Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
if not, I'm looking for a motion.
Commissioner Flick will make a motion for tentative approval, subject to one proviso.
There's a second.
Brown seconds.
If there's no further discussion, we'll vote on machines. The docket has tentative approval. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next up is pathways to removing obstacles to housing. Grant.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kelly Butler with the Department of Safety and Permits. Ashley Becknell with the, oh, this is new to me. Ashley Becknell, our Chief Zoning Official with the Department of Safety and Permits, and of course, you know, Rachel Burke. So good afternoon, and thank you for providing us the space and time to discuss an exciting opportunity the City Planning Commission and Safety and Permits is working on. These two departments are in the process of submitting a pro-housing grant application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. The public hearing is a chance to engage the commission and the public about this opportunity. However, no action is needed as a result of this presentation. It is simply for informational purposes. HUD is seeking proposals that will result in the removal of barriers to the development and preservation of affordable housing. The grant allows for developing proposals for planning activities that support affordable housing production and preservation, including developing and updating housing plans, community development strategies, updating permitting processes and procedures and timelines, creating anti-displacement policies and prevention measures, as well as developing proposals for preserving existing housing stock from threats such as climate change, natural disasters, and expiring or loss of affordable units. HUD is expected to award $85 million to approximately 20 municipalities in the range of $1 to $10 million.
The city of New Orleans has been experiencing an affordability crisis since and before Hurricane Katrina made landfall in 2005. CPC and Safety and Permits recognize the ongoing challenges in providing and preserving affordable housing to meet residents' needs. We also recognize that not all affordable housing issues will be solved through the removal of zoning barriers. However, taking the steps to reduce these barriers while providing opportunities for increased housing production through zoning reform and regulatory improvements are crucial in an overall housing policy strategy. The staffs at CPC and Safety and Permits are proposing 3 focus areas for the development and preservation of affordable housing through this grant opportunity. The first is the completion and community engagement of the ongoing Housing Opportunity Study. The second is creating and implementing the Healthy Homes Program diversion and resources process for tenants and landlords. And the third is establishing an affordable housing office of services within the Department of Safety and Permits. The first area of focus is a Housing Opportunity Study. On August 21st, 2019, Mayor Cantrell tasked CPC to write a housing study that identifies zoning barriers to the production and preservation of affordable housing in the city's comprehensive zoning ordinance. Through the work, though the work for the study has been underway pre-pandemic, there is so much work to do to bring this study to completion. The funding will be used to support engaging expertise to complete the study, conducting data collection and analysis for providing informed recommendations on zoning and land use policies, and developing a robust community engagement process.
And so the second thing that we are asking funding for is the Healthy Homes Program Diversion Action Plan. The Healthy Homes Ordinance was adopted in November of 2022. And the purpose of the program is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of public by ensuring persons who reside in New Orleans, specifically renters, occupy safe and habitable dwellings. Through this program, the rental property must be registered with the city and receive a certificate of compliance. Dwellings must meet basic requirements for habitability, and there are measures in place securing the rights of lessees to report violations without fear of retaliation. The Healthy Homes Program is an extremely important policy tool needed to ensure individuals and families have secure housing. However, there are concerns that when implemented, residents may be displaced when units are deemed non-compliant and uninhabitable despite the tenant protections. According to US Census data released in 2022, looking at data from 2017 to 21, there are approximately 191,000 housing units in the city of New Orleans. Of these, approximately 56% are occupied by renter households. The data is severely lacking to show how many of these units are in need of remediation to be in compliance with the ordinance. But it is anticipated that there will be a significant number of units that will fall into this category, given the age of the housing stock in New Orleans. The funding opportunity provides DSP with the resources to obtain data and set up a Healthy Homes Diversion Action Plan. Once we have an idea of the need, we will use the data to coordinate with partner agencies to create pathways to compliance, focusing on weatherization of units, reduce utility costs, and eliminate hazards, as well as landlord education. The third arm of the funding request is for us to establish an Office of Affordable Housing Services within DSP. Recognizing the need for making permitting more efficient, DSP will use funding from this grant to create this office within the zoning division of the Department of Safety and Permits. Streamlined re-permitting and review policies will help shorten development time and increase the supply of affordable housing units. There is a great need, in addition, for building development capacity for New Orleans property owners. And that is one of the things that we are hoping to use this office for, particularly for those property owners that own property in the city's older neighborhoods where decades of disinvestment is evident.
This office intends to address this with a targeted approach to prioritize our mom and pop property owners with technical assistance in overcoming these hurdles, and by providing an office where questions can be answered and capacity building resources are provided. The City Planning Commission will host 2 public hearings to allow members of the community to learn about the proposed activities for funding and provide feedback. Today's presentation is a first public hearing and provides general information about the grant. The entire application will be posted tomorrow, October 11th. A second public hearing is scheduled for the next City Planning Commission meeting on October 24th, where we will collect public comments responding to the grant application. Information regarding written public comment submittal is located on the screen to the right. All comments must be submitted before the end of the day on October 25th, 2023. And that concludes our presentation. I'll just scroll down a little bit.
Thank you. We don't.
I have a question.
Yep.
Questions? Yeah.
Will there be any consideration for the Office of Affordable Housing Services to sort of nudge or encourage homeowners of a few or multiple properties for the federal infrastructure funding that's currently available for affordable housing?
So one of the things that the office does anticipate doing is like finding these what maybe we'll start calling as a glide path, like helping to shepherd people to resources and have a place within the permitting office that you can come and find out about this different information. Now, I will be honest, to set that up, we have to learn about that and find out what that is, but that's what we're asking funding for, is to help set that up.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi, anybody else waiting? Okay, this is great. Good luck. Do you have any idea how much you'll be asking for in this grant?
All of it.
Okay, like 10 million, some back, 10 million?
I mean, we're gonna shoot big.
Okay.
We have a great need. $10 million. That grant application lists a lot of opportunities, including development, all this kind of stuff. So we're really trying to be thoughtful in our strategy about how to do that. But we did recognize $10 million wasn't going to get us very far in the world of development. So how can we set up the systems to help that while preserving existing housing stock? So, you know, we have it broke down. I'll be honest, we're still working through some of the numbers there, but we want to shoot for as much as we can. We have the need. We just have to be smart about deploying it. So.
Okay, so do you anticipate if setting up an office of affordable housing within all the services that you could provide there, you would anticipate new staff positions to be open, right? And then how would you fund those beyond the grant funding period when the money ran out?
So many of the things that we're proposing, we intend to run as a pilot, and we've also proposed funding for studies to demonstrate that these programs will fundamentally pay for themselves. We believe that to be true, but I think once we have the hard numbers and the trial run to show policymakers, I think from there on, budgeting will be a much easier question.
What would be funding sources then that would pay for itself?
Well, so once it gets running, I think that's better a question for the finance folks in our administration. But my guess is that if we could demonstrate that we're saving them general fund money with this is something that we could ask for out of the general fund. We could also look to dedicated funds that exist in the city, such as the NIF, for potential funding opportunities.
Okay, great. And could you say again what will happen October 24th? You'll be at our meeting on October 24th?
We're posting the completed application tomorrow. We need to give the public 15 days and to review it. So we'll come back on October 24th. And at that point, y'all will be able to read the actual application and can come back with more specific questions, you or the public.
Okay.
I have a question. Is there consideration for like a grading scale for these rental properties? Like A, you're great, B, you're not so great, or you just meet the bare minimum?
I think that that's something we are contemplating. So we're at the very early stages with the Healthy Homes program. It doesn't go into effect until January 1 of next year. And we're starting with large apartment complexes. I think it's a program that we have a lot of ideas for. And so we're going to, as we develop, start with the basics and add on from there. But I do think a grading system, something we've discussed, as well as providing public facing resources that make it very clear what history landlords or apartment complexes have had with the Healthy Homes office, so that a tenant has a better idea what they're getting into without needing to go to social media or some other forum to ask about a specific landlord.
It's a Carfax for housing.
That's what we're hoping, yes.
So what will be your tools for shutting somebody down or for non-compliance, or even worse, just what will you be armed with legally?
So as the Healthy Homes program is written now, we can enforce them through our administrative hearing process, which allows us to charge up to $1,000 per violation per day. We are also asking for a dedicated attorney in the budget for this program to help make sure that those cases are brought promptly and efficiently. However, we can, as always, go to civil district court to seek additional penalties, including specific performance, if we feel as though it's warranted.
Thank you.
I want to share that I feel like there's an opportunity here because Louisiana is #1 for historic tax credits on utilizing them, and that just got increased. And so, especially reading this in the preservation piece, you know, imperative that that could actually be what pencils a lot of this project when we're going to existing structures and encouraging developers to actually use those historic tax credits, especially within the historic core.
Thank you for that. And one of the, I guess I'll call it, looking at it like a companion piece, like as we set this up, looking to, you know, one of the things in terms of affordable housing is how do we restore our historic housing stock to make it energy efficient for tenants and weatherization. So how do we keep that along with, you know, one of the indicators that we've learned through this forming this grant process is that there is a list of thousands of people that are on the cusp of becoming homeless because they can't afford their utility bills. So how do we do that? You know, and so that's going to be a huge part is factoring in the historic preservation side of it, along with actually making places livable and keeping people in their homes.
There's also opportunities for energy efficient mortgages in the marketplace as well. Just, you know, encourage another piece of the pie to be able to help make these projects affordable. I was so excited to read this. I rarely print out everything that is emailed to me to review. And I printed this out and highlighted it and was just so excited to be able to read. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll have a big congratulations in
Yeah.
January.
We're gonna manifest it. All right, we're gonna manifest it.
I'll give just one final question from me. If you could talk a little bit about the interdepartmental relationships to make sure that this is implemented well. I know, you know, talked a little bit about environmental sustainability and energy efficiency. So thinking of the Office of Resiliency, but also thinking about existing programs like the Office of Community Development has the owner occupied rehab program, you know, zero interest loan. I'm just wondering how you see those things building on each other and not creating more fragmentation.
So as part of this, when the initial team sat down, and Larry was one of the initial team members as well, we went through the list of like, who is it that we need at the table? Who do we need to work with? Who's working on things that will influence this? I keep saying this, and I hope I'm not being redundant, but last year, the budget committee meetings, sitting there and during the presentations, it was so apparent affordable housing literally touches everything in this city. The SPCA, people, you know, not being able to keep their animals, and they were experiencing costs, and there was just, you know, every sector where this touches, and so there is that, and so this is super important that when we're looking at the housing study, when we're looking at these other factors, that we have everybody and what they are, and so that's why we want to create this resource list and provide, I know Ashley wants to jump in here because I'm missing things to say, but, and I'll let her, but you know, I guess I'll let her answer the question, but that's exactly what we intend to do, is to bring those folks to the table. For the purpose of this grant, we've met with folks at the data center. We've met,
Talk about who we talked to.
yes, we've talked to SLLS, Southeast Legal Services. We've talked to our friends at GNOHA or Housing NOLA. Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. Who is it that is doing things, and then how can we use this grant to help support their work, and they in turn support our work?
And we've also engaged many of the internal departments that would have a stake in this work. We've been working closely with the Office of Resilience, the Office for Homeless Services, the Health Department, Office of Community Development, RTA, Economic Development. I think that's most of them.
All of them.
Yeah, we've made very good use of our new large conference room to make sure we have everybody at the table, and you know, we are listening to what they have to say and how they can help and how we can help them. This is something that each of us working in concert is going to have a much greater effort than the sum of its parts.
Thank you.
I have a question. What pushback from landlords? So I'm sure you've heard it, but what are some good talking points to be able to counteract some of that? Because you've got the mom and pop operators, you talked about that here. I mean, everyone's just hanging on with insurance and taxes.
So for Healthy Homes specifically, that's only a small part of the grant, but to talk a bit more about that, I think what Healthy Homes can do for a good landlord is huge. We recognize that it needs to be both carrots and sticks. So by allowing a good landlord to stand out and making sure that information that a landlord has a good history and we have not received complaints is readily available to the renting public, I think that will be a benefit to them. It's also a free program for them, provided that they register on time. So that's another critical move, but they are a group that through Healthy Homes, we want to make sure we're engaging because we want to help landlords as well as tenants. Another thing that we're proposing doing as a part of this grant that is related to Healthy Homes, besides the diversion program, which would connect them to resources to help rehab their properties, would be landlord school, as we're sort of calling it, and helping them better understand how to run the business that they've entered into and providing them with tools and resources that can help make that more financially feasible for them.
And our partners at SLLS have been helpful in us figuring out, like, maybe working through setting up a model lease so that there's tenant protections and landlord protections. I mean, one of our biggest concerns is that we don't want to lose units. We want these units to be a bit habitable, you know, we want people to be able to stay there. And like Ashley said, you know, we want carrots and sticks. Right now, we might have a lot of sticks. We've got to figure out the carrot part as well.
Thank you for the great work. As you can tell, you know, everybody's super excited. Everyone had a comment or question. Okay. Next up is the transit-oriented community study.
Well, hopefully this will be a nice complement to speak after the housing grant. So I'm joined today by members of the CPC staff who are throughout the building, but also who have come before us. We're very excited to present to you the transit-oriented community study. As some of you may be aware, the study has been in the works since 2020, and some CPC staff here at the desk and many before us have been involved in this work since as far back as 2017. Today, we are here to present the findings of the study and showcase the key strategies and actions we recommend going forward to implement a transit-oriented communities planning framework. Okay, thanks. So we'd like to back up a second and explain what is the definition of a transit-oriented community. So transit-oriented communities have been implemented in cities across the globe for over 40 years. They're characterized as developments, corridors, or hubs that incorporate compact human-scale design, such as a mix of housing choices, businesses, institutions, and amenities that are all located within easy access of safe multimodal transportation infrastructure. Transit-oriented communities encourage people to walk, bike, roll, or take high-quality transit to get to where they want to go. So what does this transit-oriented community study do? This study is the launching point. It creates a flexible framework for developing transit-oriented communities across the city. It initiates the key strategies and actions to develop future recommendations that will come before the CPC and City Council to modify land use regulations that will encourage and incentivize equitable commercial and residential development opportunities along transit corridors. It creates opportunities to work across agencies that often work in silos and partner with public and private entities, working to enhance affordable housing and economic development opportunities along with transportation infrastructure. So how did we get here, and what is the background that initiated the need for a transit-oriented community study? In 2019, the RTA received transit-oriented development funding from the Federal Transit Authority to develop an internal plan that would look at making it faster and more convenient to take transit along the most frequently used transit routes. In July of 2020, Mayor Cantrell directed the CPC staff to conduct a study that provides recommendations to implement transit-oriented communities' land use policies in collaboration with RTA efforts to enhance transit corridors. In 2021, during the height of the pandemic, the TOC study began and the study team conducted public engagement around the concept of TOCs and developed an initial methodology to identify nodes and corridors along transit lines to support TOC developments. You can find the results of these findings in the appendix of the study. In 2022, the RTA implemented the New Links plan and transit routes were changed throughout the greater New Orleans region to enhance the system. RTA also launched planning efforts for the first bus rapid transit line, which is envisioned as a priority transit line, much like a streetcar with dedicated right-of-way lanes for larger capacity buses to travel, connecting residents more efficiently from New Orleans East to downtown and then across the river to the West Bank. In 2023, considering the robust changes in the bus network, the CPC and RTA decided to reboot the TOC study efforts with the goal to start a TOC working group to determine future TOC land use policy recommendations based upon the updated transit route changes and demographic and development changes along these corridors and surrounding neighborhoods. This leads us to the present. As outlined in the study, the next steps to implement the TOC framework is to launch a TOC working group that will work with public and private partners to develop pathways that enable TOC characteristics in neighborhoods and identify a revised methodology for establishing priority areas. So what are the goals of the TOC framework? The study team has outlined the following goals to ensure implementing the transit-oriented communities planning framework will be a success. First, the planning efforts will cultivate, activate vibrant and sustainable communities by developing enhanced design standards along TOC corridors. Secondly, the TOC planning and implementation efforts will encourage transit ridership by increasing safety, accessibility, and activity around transit stops and prioritizing right-of-way space for transit. The TOC framework will prioritize equitable development that preserves existing affordable housing units and incentivize new affordable housing close to public transit and employment. By utilizing the TOC framework, it will attract, retain, and grow business opportunities within transit-oriented community corridors. The TOC framework will allow density and mixed-use development that includes housing, retail, and offices within walking distance to transit stops across the city. And finally, the TOC framework will further promote active transportation trips as a viable option for people in the city by ensuring land use regulations complement transportation infrastructure to make it easier to reach destinations by foot, bicycle, or on transit. So the key recommendations of the study are the following. One, convene an internal TOC working group, as we have discussed, and establish an external engagement group to guide its activities in an equitable manner that supports all New Orleanians, especially those in need of affordable housing and reliable public transportation. Through the working group, the second goal is to develop TOC overlay districts and enhance provisions with the city's comprehensive zoning ordinance, which prioritizes placemaking. To do that, we must acknowledge that efforts are needed to ensure residents are not faced with pressures of gentrification and displacement brought on by potential developments. We need to encourage neighborhood serving commercial uses and incentivize developments that offer public benefits, such as affordable housing, healthcare, groceries, schools, parks, and other play spots that improve our health and quality of life. The final strategy is to collaborate with the Complete Streets Working Group to make sure that the CPC staff and community members have a seat at the table and will help guide planning concepts for infrastructure enhancements, such as high capacity transit corridors, community-minded and accessible transit hubs, investments in flood mitigation and green infrastructure elements, and safer multimodal transportation networks, such as sidewalks, intersections, and bikeways that benefit all residents. So what comes next? The CPC will initiate the TOC working group, which will include city, public, and private stakeholders to relaunch the TOC methodology to identify priority corridors of TOC development. The group will work to start to develop land use text amendments to the CCO to make it easier to implement these recommendations after the methodology is rerun. This is anticipated to be incremental and efforts will be ongoing, including robust public engagements once TOC areas and priority transit stations are identified. The completion of the study also unlocks funding opportunities at the federal, state, and local levels to find equitable strategies to implement the TOC planning framework. This will include opportunities to conduct more robust public engagement, as stated previously, and participation in land use decisions, engagement with the community on amenities and priority transit hubs. The TOC study also enables the CPC to partner with other city and state agencies to develop opportunities to increase affordable housing, safe access to all modes of travel, and economic development strategies that will have long-term benefits for residents and businesses throughout the city. So this concludes the presentation, and we look forward to any questions you guys may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff
Yes.
or
Hi.
comments?
Thank you so much. This is great. How quickly, what kind of time frame would there be for TOC study to be completed?
So the study is completed. Do you mean the recommendations?
Yeah, to get to the point where you could utilize this in funding applications.
So right now we're utilizing the completion of this study in a grant that's due today.
Okay.
So it's the RTA is submitting a grant through the Federal Transit Authority for a bus rapid transit oriented development grant.
Okay.
So just by
really-
getting to this point, it's activating
Okay, good. 'Cause
potential.
my concern was just with the amount of federal funds available now, and with every year that passes, they're getting used up. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was one of the motivations to really wrap this up
Yeah.
this summer into this fall, because we knew those funding opportunities are on a cycle, and they're nearing the 3-year term of a 5-year funding cycle. So
okay, great. And then, do you know if there's been any kind of measurement of how the new links, the RTA program, the new links program is functioning, how well they're doing since last, October, since they started with this new link? Maybe this would be a question for RTA.
Unfortunately, a representative from RTA is not here, who would be the person to answer that question.
Yeah. All right. And in the last presentation too, about the housing opportunity study and the grant that they talked about anti-displacement. I mean, I can see that displacement could be a major concern here. Could you tell me a couple of things? What are some things like key anti-displacement efforts?
So that's a really great question. And, one of the reasons that there's a couple of different terminologies in here: transit-oriented development and transit-oriented communities. So really the efforts are looking at, for transit-oriented communities, they're looking at longer corridors where you can activate areas through land use decisions that would enable placemaking, but also enable current features of community to exist and maintain and be incentivized to, have long-term leases that are affordable, or, there could be different zoning regulations where you're kind of complementing what's already existing by giving, incentives to maintain that development versus, it being replaced with something.
I can add to that. I mean, zoning has always been just a part of the full equation. So, I think what we're most interested in kind of emphasizing on this study is that, the decisions that get made about what gets developed around the transit corridors has to take into account that equity issue. And so that means, emphasizing a range of housing opportunities and housing types. That means not simply upzoning current stable neighborhoods and so that the developments target those neighborhoods and people have to be pushed out. But it's also going to have to be combined with some of the and going back to the housing thing that we just talked about, with some of the kind of finance side programs that the city has and can have access to, and can steer people to help them stay in their homes as property values and property taxes are going up. So it's the idea of this study is to kind of start making those linkages, but it's not limited to, you know, having a bus stop there and having zoning that allows certain stuff. Those are only pieces of the puzzle.
Thank you.
Uh,
All right, I'm gonna go ahead one,
Oh,
I promise,
well,
I
yep.
promise I won't hold that much long, but
Sure.
just, and part of it is identifying like publicly owned property around it that you could launch some of these incentive proposals with public-private partnerships or whatever, right? That's gotta be key. Okay.
the city's application for the grant, and we are prepared to, prepared to provide assistance if and when the grant is awarded. In regards to the transit-oriented community study, we would like to also comment and support as well, but also ask that there be a communications and education strategy implemented into the TOC working group to ensure that any land use policies that are proposed aren't thwarted by attempts at NIMBYism. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Buckley.
Hello, Commissioners. Samuel Buckley speaking here as Policy Director for RIDE New Orleans. For anyone who's not familiar with RIDE, we're a grassroots-driven nonprofit supporting policies and investments to create world-class public transit service for Greater New Orleans. I'm here to speak in support of the findings from the TOC study. RIDE is encouraged to see that, as has been said, this has been a long time in the works. We're excited to see this study moving forward. We encourage CPC to adopt the recommendations and outlined in the report. RIDE has found in our annual state of transit analysis that the typical New Orleans resident only has access to 30% of access to over 95% of the region's jobs. So this creates a really significant households who do not have access to a vehicle, many of whom rely on public transit. And to answer one of the questions that came up a moment ago, the New Links recommendations based on our analysis, implementation of New Links made a difference. It increased job access by about 10%. But there's still a really significant disparity. Lowering the gap between vehicular access and car access is going to require increasing the supply of jobs and housing close to major transit corridors. So we encourage CPC to adopt the findings of the study, and we also hope that the city will move forward quickly with developing and adopting the text amendments and the other follow-up recommendations from the study.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other comments? I'd just like to ask this quick question, if this presentation is going to be made publicly available, because I think it was a great and like simple tool that can be shared around. I know sometimes reports may not be for, folks may not have the time or, just to understand all the nuance. And I think this is a great opportunity to make sure that folks can consistently engage.
Yeah, we can add it to the website. I think it might already be on it because this was a former presentation. But if not, and even if so, we'll update it with this one.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Louis? So if there's no further discussion, I'm looking for a motion.
Moved, I'm sorry, the motion is. What are we?
So
willing
just
to-
so I'll clarify, it's been a long time since we brought you all a study for your approval. But we present a study in draft form. And this was requested by the mayor. And so what we typically do with studies is we bring them before you to vote in approval for them, hopefully. And then we can transmit it as the report from the City Planning Commission.
Okay, so Commissioner Lund moves for approval of the transit-oriented community study to be sent forward to the City Planning Commission.
Commissioner Flick will second.
If there's no further discussion, we'll vote our machines. Okay, the study request moves forward. Last up are subdivision ratifications.
Thank you all, by the way.
Packet contains a list of subdivisions to ratify. We as staff have determined them to be eligible for administrative approval. And the commission is now ratifying that determination.
I'm looking for
So
a
moved.
motion. There's a second. So Lori, so Commissioner Flick made the motion, Commissioner Witcher made the second. If there's no further discussion, we'll call the vote. And subdivisions are ratified. That concludes today's business. I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So before we do that, we were expecting, I'm not gonna delay. But I would like to maybe invite our capital projects back to talk about the gap in timeline and funding spent. Or actually, it's not funding spent, it's because it's a reimbursed program. Because it's troubling to me that we were always left here with this, and then the city's now asking for an extension. And I just, anyway. No,
My apologies. I was, I meant to catch you before you spoke, and so thanks for reminding us. Vince is still working on compiling that information. So what I think probably would be best right now is that we send you all as a commission an email once that information comes to us, and I'll ask him to give it to us in email form.
that'd be great. Thank
Okay.
you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion made by Commissioner Lund, seconded by Commissioner Flick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Meeting is adjourned.
Are you here for those?